Camp 22. Many North Korean defectors and ex-prisoners can testify to the fact that there was a camp in that territory which housed more evil than anything else witnessed. It is called Camp 22, or the Haryung concentration camp, the torture camp, originally intended for political enemies of the nation, but eventually broadened their targets to anyone they could capture. Anyone who was sent there also had their family sent there, as it was completely isolated from the rest of the world. Not even satellites were allowed to map the area. Anyone who was abducted and brought to Camp 22 were destined to die there. Prisoners in Camp 22 are forced to perform agricultural, mining, and factory labor until the day they died, and any insubordination would be punished by rape, starvation, torture, mutilation, and death, which could also extend to their entire family. Much of the time, even completely obedient prisoners would be brought to the private execution site for the guards' entertainment. None of the torture and experimentation done there seemed to have any purpose, as no information was being extracted from the victims, and none of the people abducted were of any political or ideological importance, just seemingly captured at random en masse. The experiments were of no military value either, as no reports were ever written on the results. The reason so much unnecessary cruelty was allowed in Camp 22 was to trigger the development of something the administrative staff referred to as the white monsters. This was denied by the North Korean government, along with the existence of the camp itself, after the defecation and closing of the Camp 22. After the defecation and closing of Camp 22, what was reported by the guards who left the camp. If any prisoners held in this camp ever survived, they could testify to this. The program in charge of the surgeries required doctors to drink alcohol before they did surgery on the promising subjects, so any strange occurrences they witnessed could be attributed to their drunken state. Inexperienced doctors were required to torture the living subjects until they went into shock, and then were instructed to strike them in the head with a hammer and to cause brain damage. Often this resulted in death, but as some of the defected guards and doctors reported, this wouldn't kill them or leave them brain dead. Almost immediately after died, their vitals began functioning again. One doctor described that a body deflated and inflated again, as if the wound to the subject's head allowed his soul to leave, but allow something else to enter. When prisoners die, they are taken with a cargo coach and burned in a furnace until they melt and no trace remains. Those who do not die from sickness or suffering taken to a secret execution site. However, many who were taken to the secret execution site were not always crushed or shot to death. Many of them were put into a solitary room where experiment subjects were held. No guards or administrative staff were ever allowed into this room except to deposit the subjects there. Otherwise, the white monsters might be tempted to leave. The white monsters were always believed to be an in-joke amongst the guards of the camp, to keep the new recruits from biohazardous areas, and the people dumped into the building were disposed by separate workers. Eventually, when Camp 22 was nearing a shutdown, many of the prisoners were transferred to other camps for continued detainment, while a huge number were executed. It is believed that the remaining unaccounted prisoners starved to death and even resorted to eating each other to stay alive in the abandoned prison, which was locked after the staff left. However, it is believed that when Camp 22's status was no longer valid, the administrative staff quit ordering the guards to put people and confiscated children in the solitary chambers and just to shoot them. As the days passed by, guards began to hear unsettling noises from the solitary chamber there, as if there were things still alive in there, stirring and looking for a way out. Curious guards questioned the administrators about what was being held in there and why, and after receiving their answer, they defected the first opportunity they had, distancing themselves from the horrors of North Korea as soon as possible. Those who remained were killed by their fellow soldiers under a secret order. As many of the prisoners abandoned in there would not eat their own family members or murder each other to stay alive, it is thought and an unrelated third party wiped out and cannibalized the remaining prisoners. The third party, which was locked away in those buildings. Camp 22 was not just a torture camp filled with homicidal psychopaths who were paid to punish and kill prisoners sent there. It was a breeding ground for something even more horrible and savage men. Beyond hounds trained to kill children, beyond inebriated doctors performing unnecessary body-deforming surgeries, it was the place where Agma, the white monster, was born. The personification of all cruelty, death, rape, and suffering in North Korea, and the only place where it could find bodies that were vacated solely for its use. Only in a place where death and suffering saturated the soil could such creature be born. Even after Camp 22's closing, an unsettling fact still remained, as their other concentration camps have not been closed, and the execution grounds of each one have a building that the staff are recommended to stay away from. Trucks are seen loading boxes out of the camp filled with coal and corn, but also take an additional unmarked cargo similar to animal cages. Why the North Korean government continued to transport these creatures in secrecy is unknown. However, it is evident that they are not limited to their own borders when releasing them. Sightings of Agma are in every country on the planet. Truck drivers are seeing pure white humans skulking across the roads at night. Hunters are finding human footprints next to their own tracks. Pale human-like animals creeping along the rooftops in many towns are sighted constantly, sunken pure black eyes and sharp talons being a common trait amongst the descriptions of them. The ability to speak languages and to have otherworldly powers like invisibility, teleporting, telepathy, or mind control are attributed to them. Many young children who have disappeared have drawn pictures of creatures that looked like the Agma of North Korea, and while they differ from picture to picture, the major shapes and attributes remain constant. Every day a new Agma is born, ready to find its way into another town, ready to stalk and kill another person or family. With how long and how often Camp 22 brought bodies to their off-limits buildings, there would be enough of these entities to have one in every city in America, and the numbers are continuing to rise with the efficiency that North Korea concentration camps produce them. It is unknown if they are weak to contemporary weaponry, but the lack of recorded kills or recovered bodies does not play in its favor. It is unknown if North Korea influenced the behavior of these creatures in any way, or just unleashed them in their dormant state on unsuspecting populaces to see what happens. Soon enough, their numbers will be too high. Soon enough, proof of them will be undeniable. Soon enough, there will be no place on earth to escape them. The only conclusion or advice a person can take away from these facts is that they should keep their loved ones close, spend more time with them, and be wary of the darkness outside their homes. When the Agma no longer have to hide in the dark of night, our world will become a nightmare that surpasses Camp 22.